your end as well?
Yeah.
Testing.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. If you can hear me, that's great.
So, how are we doing today, Jay? What's happening?
Not too much. Moved offices yesterday so we can have the place painted. I've got this podcast and two others, or one other that I'm guesting on today. And also, have to do my job at some point as well.
Of course. But I mean, I looked into it and like you seem like you've had quite a journey, like 5 years, creative agency. And from what I gather is you basically tell people what they're doing wrong with their advertising and their branding and getting people to follow them.
Well, we do content marketing. So what we show people how to do is how to use stuff like podcasting or a number of other different, types of media, how to use that to market yourself. So I don't, if we do anything with advertising, then we're going to create the video or the audio or something for the advert. We give people suggestions on what they should do with the strategy, but mostly it's about the content creation for us.
Okay. And what got you into being a content creator, like sort of advisor per se?
Sure. I like it. We've just swung straight in, huh?
Straight in there.
Just that, like all nice and quiet. I dig it. Content creation for us was kind of, to be honest, probably more by mistake. We started a podcast production company back sort of 5 years ago. And the reason being is because about a year before that, we had a podcast called How to Write a Tune. So I say we, that's me and my business partner, Tony. And we would sit down with musicians every week and talk about how to write songs, basically. From that, we then that's basically, I realized that we could genuinely offer this service to other people. If he hadn't put a microphone in front of me, I would never been able to podcast, basically. So we started offering it out as a service, and then kind of de facto found ourselves in the back of a lot of sort of large companies where we were sat in the marketing departments and we were the weird podcast guys. And more and more, we kind of saw things that people were doing incorrectly necessarily or not using the content to its fullest. So we'd be the first people to be like, hey, you know what you should do is X, Y, and Z. So we expanded from just doing podcast production to then video and design as a whole, essentially all the content, anything that anyone posts. And from there, it's, kind of flourished into an international agency.
So it just came about through accident, like you were doing this and you're like, oh, I really enjoy this. And boom, I'm getting paid a lot for it and people are using this. And like, you know what? There's nothing else I'd rather be doing for the rest of my life.
Podcasting was just a real revelation for me. Like I say, so the first time I'd ever even heard of podcasting, my best mate and someone I've been in a band with for nigh on 15 years plus now, said to me, hey, can you, on Tuesday, I'm busy, can you host my podcast? And I was like, cool, sure, but what's a podcast? So he sent me a couple of links and how to listen to a show, but I'd literally never even heard of it before. That first show that I hosted, which was called Allegedly a Podcast, and that ran for like 3.5 hours, real proper like podcast. And I loved it. I thought it was just fantastic. But I just would never have found it or had anything to do with it had he not kind of like put it in front of me. That just kind of kicked off in my head. Like, I'm the perfect person to really enjoy podcasting. It's a great medium for me. But I just wouldn't have been able to do it with it. And especially 5-6 years ago, because the tech was hectic. It wasn't easy at all. Like, it wasn't just clicking your podcast is live. There was a whole mess of techie things and RSS feeds that need to be played with. So I just saw it as being like, this is so much fun. What a great way to connect to people. It's also a phenomenal way to actually speak to people. Like I was getting musicians on the show who were huge. And I was getting to sit down and talk for an hour and a half with these people about their favorite subjects, which is, how they write songs. The fact that I enjoyed it so much just kind of made sense to say, hey, maybe there's some other people out in the world who might want to do the same thing.
I don't want to be a nosy Parker, but may I ask, which musicians did you interview?
Sure. No. Be a nosy Parker. The show's still live. You can check it out at How to Write a Tune. So we had, grime artists, folk, rock, punk, metal, D&B, everyone, mixes of the whole lot. We had a guy called Frank Turner on the show. We had the guy who sung I'm Just a Teenage Dirtbag
Oh,
Baby. Brendan B. Burns is his name. Brendan B. Brown, sorry. So we had him on the show. Like I say, so many people. We did like 70, 80 episodes where we just sat down with different musicians of different ilk, and literally people who were buskers or super famous touring musicians. Everyone had the same kind of chat, which is really interesting. Like people kind of come at songwriting in the same way.
what was who was a guest that really stood out in terms of their intriguing story and that was highly entertaining, that really sort of struck a chord with you?
Tough to say, to be honest, because that's the thing I like about podcasting. The thing I like about interviewing people in long form conversations is it's always an interesting story. I've never met two humans with the same story, and that's always interesting to me. Musicians are an interesting group to focus on because, as a rule, they've been through hardship to get to wherever they are. They're going through hardship. So there was, to be honest, there was just so many wow moments in the show. It's hard to pick on one.
It must be even more. I mean, what's it like now when you're interviewing musicians? Because
yeah, so How to Write a Tune finished a couple of years ago now. Basically, we were too busy running the business, and since then we've started other podcasts which are more business and LinkedIn focused instead. But yeah, it must be a nightmare. I mean, to be honest, I imagine there's a lot for if we were still running How to Write a Tune. I bet there's a whole bunch more guests available because people are all available to talk like this. When we were doing it 5 years ago, we were using Zoom then, and people were a little bit like, "Hello, am I on?" You know, doing all this kind of thing. So I imagine it'd be quite easy to book guests, if I'm perfectly honest.
that's the one thing I like about Zoom. I think I'll probably be using Zoom even when things return to normal for podcasts, because arranging like a studio and like meeting in a certain place, that there's so many things that could go wrong. Could get stuck in traffic, the tube could be down, but if you just do it on Zoom, they just need Wi-Fi.
That is true. I mean, you have a lot of the problems with the person on the other side. What do they bring to the table? Do they have a good camera, a good microphone, lighting, stuff? Because, you know, we've seen a lot of podcasts that look like that the whole time. And it's, you know, very, very, you know, really easy to sit in a silhouette the whole time. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's really opened up the world. And I think as an awful lot more people have now started to understand that this is a perfectly acceptable form of communication, it's going to make podcasting a lot easier. Just getting interviews with people an awful lot easier. However, there's still some magic to sitting down face to face. There's still something that's lost in the micro reactions that you see, body language, things which are just missed on Zoom, which make interviews so much easier. I'm very handsy. I'm expressive with my hands. That can really help it on a podcast when you're talking to someone, because you can't necessarily always do like listening noises. Yes, because it'll stop people mid-sentence. So being able to do a hand movement and be like, oh yeah, I get you. Oh, really interesting. Tell me more. And actually do subtle psychological cues to keep people talking, because the lovely thing that I always, it happens on every show, you'll see everyone realize at some point, hang on, have I been talking for ages? There's a mic in front of me. And then they usually finish that sentence with, yeah, but, you know, like, and it kind of dies out. So being a good host, being a good interviewer is all about just being able to wait for that moment and give them a little something which allows them to say, it's okay, you're still confident, carry on talking, you're in a safe space.
Yeah, I feel with the podcast, with the person you're interviewing, they should be doing most of the talking rather than you. Right.
100%. But how you keep them talking is quite an art, because everyone at some point gets a little, you know, stage fright. Everyone gets a little that. So it's just passing notes, as we, you know, in music, it's like little passing notes, just help them when they realize all of a sudden that they're being interviewed and they kind of knock the conversation back to you across the table. You've got to be there with a quick fire, oh really, why, pow, and then knock it back to them so they can carry on with their bit of the sentence.
You're making it sound like a boxing match, like he throws the jab, you block it like this, then you throw a jab, overhand.
A little bit. Like a little bit. And, you know, because you literally have to be playing defense essentially to keep that person being active. So it can be, because I think one of the things, there's been so many podcasts have started since March. It was literally tons. I can't say how many, but we've had like influx of people being like, I want to start a show, I want to start a show, I want to start a show. And I think for that reason, it's great that there are so many shows, and that's really exciting. But there's a lot of people who think podcast interviewing is as simple as just like hit record, do it. And yeah, sure, it can be, but that also can end up with like some really, really awkward moments. So you have to remember it's an entertainment, right? You're not only having a conversation, but you're having a conversation for entertainment purposes. So it's the host's job to kind of get, or in my eye, when I'm hosting, it's my job essentially to get someone who's interesting on the show and just give them the space. Just give them the space and make them feel like they're in a safe space to say what they need to say and not get kind of freaked out by the fact that they're, you're live or you're being recorded or there's lights and all kind of things in your face.
Okay, so that's an interesting point you brought up there, because there's two questions that I'd like to follow on from that. So there's one thing that I find interesting is that, so when I interview comedians on the podcast, they tend to waffle anywhere. So what I've had to change it a bit, where I've had to sort of say, this is where I want you to go, these are the things I want you to do, and like put it around that, because otherwise it will go this way, that way, that way, and there's like whoever's listening and me as well, it's just going everywhere. It's like having a talk in a park, and you don't want that. Talking of, no, I meant like it's just like having a chat with your mates, but it's got to be, it is in a way. But
I know what you mean, like a chat in the park, like literally, because those conversations, there's a lot of value in them when I'm sat chatting with my mates in the park or wherever, or just chatting nonsense. But this is an entertainment thing. Like if other people are going to spend time being involved in it, then you got to kind of keep, and I know what you mean. You get someone like a comedian on, or like we used to have real chatty musicians, or we used to have like musical comedy people on the show as well, and you got to kind of corral them. You got to be like, all right, whoa, how about we get vaguely back on topic to some degree, so people know what you're talking about, you crazy person.
Yeah. And then you have to bloody do all this editing around it, and like, then you have to be like, boom. But it's a funny thing, because I did a MC workshop with Barry Ferns, who runs Angel Comedy Club, one of the best comedy clubs in London. And he says, like, people at the top of the game, they pay attention to the very small things. And that's something I consider a bit of a weakness, but I think it's something that does play a part. So like by doing those little questions, it helps steer each podcast to do a certain way. I didn't know that before.
Well, and it's like you say, if you use the boxing analogy, you have to have different things in your arsenal during a conversation to keep it flowing naturally, if that makes sense. You got to have a jab, which is going to be a little passing note, it's going to be a little like, oh, really? Yeah. And that's going to allow people to know that you're listening and they should carry on talking. But you also have to be, when someone gets to the end of what they're saying, ready for that nice right cross when you have to change a subject, or you have to come up with the next question, or continue that on. It's why I've always been a huge fan of Joe Rogan, because those conversations flow really, really naturally for an awful long time. However, he is steering the whole thing. Wherever it leads, it kind of leads organically, but he's steering it.
I like him. The thing is, one of the reasons I think why it works so well, he never did the podcast just for the sake of it. He did it because he's interested in the person and he wants to find out about them, and he wants to engage. Well, sometimes when I see some podcasts, they just do it for the sake of it. And so, I mean, with the podcast myself, when I started it, I was a bit all over the place, but then gradually as I started producing, I started to figure out where I want it to go. And it's getting to a place where I think I know where it wants to go, but it's getting there.
Yeah. But it's what you're saying there. And so what you're saying there, and also what we were saying that Joe Rogan's done, is just allow the show to grow organically. And actually that's something across all content creation, right? So we do it for businesses, we do it for brands, people, whatever, all over the world. You have to let your content breathe, right? You are the reason you're creating it, and you can't just be a case of like, we have to release this video every Tuesday. If you haven't got something to say, or if it makes more sense that you're going to start releasing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then let it happen. Don't necessarily fight against the tide all the time with content, because it's a brilliant being able to post content and actually speak to an audience is just phenomenal. You speak to movie actors who love the idea of theatre because they get an instant reaction from their crowd. Well, you have that if you're releasing any type of content, a blog, video, audio, anything. So use your audience to then inform you about the next thing you're going to make. Don't necessarily make a year's worth of content in January, but this is the message. And, if we use 2020 as an example, if you'd done that, you'd be in real trouble come April, because you'd still be talking about the normal messaging, whereas the rest of the world, have a completely separate focus. So allow that comments, allow that interaction with people, and the same thing, that they do on a stage when you, like a comedian does, and you can feel the crowd talk and you can bounce back off of them. Content's actually the same thing. You have an instant reaction from an entire global network. If people aren't liking your stuff, change it. If people are liking it, but you don't like the kind of comments they're doing, then be less confrontational, or, look at what you're posting and how that's making that happen. Because you can do that, again, very much like in the microcosm of a comedy show, essentially you can get better. You can vibe off of that engagement from people and say, my show wants to be this now. And that's okay. It's okay for me to allow it to breathe and change.
Yeah, it's because I've noticed that, there's going to be a question I want to ask later on about it, because you've made a good point there, that I've seen a lot of podcasts, and I think there always has to be an aim in it, and there has to be a message. And I feel, going on to that, what do you feel are the key sort of 5 differences or couple differences between a podcast that is successful and growing and one that is not really doing anything?
Good question. That is a good question. Okay, so 5 differences between successful podcasts and everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I like that. Okay, in that case, what I would say is, first and foremost, is audio and video quality. Look at the audio you're capturing, what you have in the background, the lighting you have of your face, and also the guests as well. The really successful podcasts we work on will send equipment to guests who don't have it. I get that's super expensive and not something everyone can do, but if you have the ability, there's a lot you can ask. You can have a 20-minute warm-up call where you say to them, cool, can you make sure you're sat in the middle of the shot? Or can you make sure, actually, I've only got light behind you. Can you, put some lights on your face? That would be the first, so the quality of the content coming in.
Okay.
The second has to be consistency. Every successful podcast, has been consistent for a very long time. Consistent means set a schedule, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a really high frequency of release. It doesn't necessarily. That'll be point 3. So consistency can mean once a month. Now, if you're going to release a podcast once a month, I would suggest having an awful lot of other content built around that you could post, and also get phenomenal guests, because you're only going to have 12 interviews a year. Whereas if you're releasing weekly, you're in a lot better space to get better guests. So the third point would be the frequency. Shows which have more content do better. Why? Because they're out there more often. Joe Rogan, as an example, again, releases sometimes 3 to 5 shows a week. So also some weeks it's 2. And I know what I was saying about consistency there seems to feel a little bit rocked, but every single week there is a show. There is a show. And if there won't be, they'll address it. So I know it's happening. And I know that in 2 weeks, there will be my show. So a high frequency of release really does help, because you're just getting out there everywhere. Unfortunately, for most shows when they're starting, that just isn't feasible. So don't kill yourself trying to release a show every day. I had a guest on my show, The Jaylee Show, last week, who for a year released a podcast every day. An hour's show every day. Ooh. In 1 year, he released 365 hours of podcasting. Right? And he's been podcasting for 7 years now. That is an extremely old podcast, because it's such a new market.
Ooh.
But, and at the end of that year, what did he say? I'm going to go 2 a day. I'm doing it twice a day. I'm going to do a morning show and an afternoon show, right? Because this guy's a savage. He's an absolute savage. But he spoke to his audience and said, what do you want? And they actually said, hey, there's too many shows, right? I don't want you to go twice a day. Actually, 3 a week would be awesome. And that's what he's been doing since then. So be consistent, and like I say, the frequency really does count. The more you have out there, the more chance it is of capturing people. Also, if you have an interview show, the more interviews you have means you have more guests, and you have a chance to take some of their audience who find your content and keep them as your audience as well. So my fourth point would be guests. There are some phenomenal shows out there that are monologues, right? There's absolutely some phenomenal shows. They're usually, as a rule, if they're successful, by people who are famous or already have a following. Because me talking into a camera, me talking into a mic, who am I? Right? Very interesting if you know the person, very difficult to get off the ground if you don't. So a lot of the times, the way shows are successful early on will be guests. So book great guests, book guests that are interesting, controversial, relevant to yourself, people that you would like to talk to. That's the real big point to say there. Anyone that you see out there that you want to talk to and you want to have a conversation and you think's interesting, you are the gatekeeper for the content you release. So make sure that you're into it. Don't do what we were talking about earlier, just podcast and podcast sake. You can be like, yeah, I guess I'll have him on. Like, yeah, I guess I'll have her on. They're cool, whatever, right? Make sure you have people on that you're really interested in. But if you can get people with a larger following on whatever platform you're focusing on, be it Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever. So if you're able to do that, then what you'll get do basically, sorry, I had a little feedback for a second. So if you find guests who are big on those platforms, you're going to be able to then grow that platform. It's as simple as that. So focus on one platform, guests with large following on there, and book them and book lots of them. The fifth point is listen to your audience. You need that engagement. You need that feedback. And that's what you see from all the great shows, is that they spent a long time creating the audience to the point where that audience is willing to say, what about having this person on the show as a guest? What about doing this? Oh, I love that bit when you two both did X, Y, or Z. That's where things get really, really interesting, because then you can allow your audience to inform your content. And I can name tons and tons of very, very successful shows that are nothing like when they started. Nothing like at all when they started. They've allowed themselves to grow, and the way they've grown is by interaction with their audience. So I guess that's my top five.
Okay, and it's interesting that you point onto that. What I like Joe Rogan, and there are other podcasts that I'm more of a fan of than that particular podcast itself. Like I like Louis Howe's podcast more. Mm-hmm. I like what else do I like? That's really interesting. Yeah, Louis Howe. I actually like Marvin's podcast a bit more.
It's a good show. Yeah.
And I like one called Trigonometry.
Never heard of it.
It's a very sort of social. It's a political podcast where
that would be why.
Yeah, it's probably better to avoid it, but they're quite honest and frank, and they interview things that people are probably too scared to talk about, and that's what I find quite interesting about it. But I say my favorite podcast is probably Louis Howe's podcast, because really? I think more geared towards that. Sometimes I feel the Joe Rogan podcast, it depends on who he has on, so it's a very sort of, I can pick it like a cat.
Oh, me too, absolutely.
But sometimes it, like, he interviews a lot of the same guests sometimes, and that once you've seen them once.
Yeah, there's lots of recurring interviews. There's lots of recurring interviews which are kind of great sometimes, and other times it's like, I've heard this story, but when you get to kind of pick up on where things left off. I think for me at the moment, my absolute favorite podcast is Fake Doctors, Real Friends. It is a phenomenal show. Great fun. Just solid, great fun. I don't know if you've heard of it at all.
No, but I'll look at Fake Doctors. I'm going to write it down. Fake Doctors,
Real Friends. So basically, wait, because you may not be into it. It is Zach Braff and Donald Faison, who are JD and Turk, respectively, from Scrubs. Ooh. And they're doing a episode by episode watch through of Scrubs. But the show, Scrubs is about a 27-minute or 30-minute show. The podcast runs hour and a half. They have guests on, like showrunners, the directors, other actors who talk about that specific episode. And essentially what's great about it is it's two good friends It's two great friends having a conversation about when they became friends 20 years ago. And it's just so much fun, especially during COVID. It's been a great show to listen to really, really enjoy kind of like their relationship, but also go back into nostalgia view and be able to go through Scrubs as a podcast. So I think they've managed to, it's a brilliant example of a podcast, because as time's gone on, they've now got more segments, different parts are happening. They have to do this, they have to do that. They have gags that are running. The audience are doing the same thing. They now have t-shirts and cups and merch and ringtones based upon little bits that they will sing in the show just to make each other laugh. And that's really what I love about podcasting, is it's a view into people's how people communicate. And if that relationship is great, if that is a really interesting dynamic, then that's the kind of shows that really light my fire.
Something, yeah, okay. So what wins it for you is that you obviously like Scrubs, but the camaraderie between two of them, and there's a lot of the real sort of community around it. But that's what.
Yes. Very much so. I've also always been a huge fan of like TV and how TV's put together. And there's some wonderful little insights into how a 20 episodic comedy is written and produced and put together and cast, and what happens in the meantime, what happens when advertising happens and networks change. And I really love all that kind of like behind the scenes bits, because I just find them so interesting.
Because yeah, it's, and how has what elements, because you started off a podcaster, but what elements of podcasting has enabled you to advise people in their content creation in other aspects like TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or all those other platforms?
Sure. And I think a lot of it came essentially from our so when we started the business, essentially most of the clients we found initially were based in the US, and we still work with probably 80% of our podcast businesses, brands and businesses over in the US. However, in the UK, when we were found business, it tended to be real big innovators and huge agencies, huge companies. So we're involved in very, very big projects in just one little piece. Based upon that, we were able to say, from the experience Tony and myself have had throughout business, he worked at Microsoft in gaming, but he wasn't testing. So for about a decade, and was helping an awful lot of stuff work there. And I worked in high-end IT sales for longer than I care to remember. So from the experience we had, we knew about what needed to be sold. I was very much always worked on the sales side of things, whereas Tony always worked on the tech side of things. Neither of us had seen marketing that really spoke to either of us, because it would either be far too in depth for salespeople to understand and we wouldn't care, or that same stuff would be really, really light on information for techie people. So what we saw is that if that's the people that you're trying to a lot of the time speak to, is this person in the business and that person in the business, what are the best ways to get around it? And that is essentially to get yourself across. You are your unique selling point, right? That is the same for every business. That's why they employ salespeople and not sales robots, because they want this person to go and take out their message, not just the message be released. What we found from working with more and more businesses was we try everything ourselves. So we always eat our own dog food. We will try and test something for 2 to 3 months minimum before we start rolling it out to companies. And that's all through our own social media. As we started to release more video, we started to suggest the same for clients. We also leaned a lot into actually on-site shoots. So we've, done many large-scale shoots where we film everything, and cameras and stuff, and directors, producers, whatever. And that's a lot of fun. And we've always enjoyed that side of things. So we wanted to move more towards the video as well as podcasting. And then at the same point, marketing kind of caught up. And luckily, we were really leaning into the right thing. And content marketing became kind of the hot new buzzword. And it's something we've been doing for an awful long time now.
God, it must have been like you've reached a good point, but it must have been a lot of tussles and a lot of like lot of stories in between. Like he would say, "No, mate, it's got to be really this," and you're like, "No, but they got to understand it." And there must have been quite a few butt heads in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of educating the market, and there still is, if I'm honest. Tons of times. Very recently, I was talking to a marketing director who was desperate. They had no content at all. They had nothing really on the company, but they were desperate for his company. And I just kept saying, no one cares. No one cares about your company that much that they're going to watch a 30-minute documentary. I don't necessarily watch every episode of shows I enjoy, right? I'm not going to watch something that's corporate and boring. And your story isn't that fantastical that anyone's going to care. However, if you took that same money and you created 31-minute videos, you're going to actually get enough messaging out there that you're going to be able to drop something that does land in front of people and they do care about, because you're going to be able to say all the different ways that you tackle things. And that is such a hard conversation to have, because that was like 30 or 40 grand worth of money they had on the table, and they were like, please make me a documentary. And I'm sat there being like, no, you mustn't make a documentary. What you need is... But one of the things we've always done, and trying to make sure that we do here at GL Pro, is we can't help, we don't. We're the first people to walk away. And if I don't think that what you're trying to achieve would help you, then I'll let someone else do it. I'm going to voice my concerns and do that. So yeah, there's been an awful lot of those conversations over the course of the business, because a lot of time we've been kind of a little bit ahead of the curve, I guess, in this idea of content marketing and content creation. So we've been educating the market an awful lot about what is and isn't a good idea.
With your industry as a whole, how do you, this is just a little tip that I want to ask for, is how do you balance sort of authenticity with sort of, with successful sales? Because I've seen sometimes with sales, like they try and swindle on your dream, and like it comes across as very sort of like wishy-washy, this and that, and it's a bit, come on, you're not convincing anyone. You wouldn't even be able to convince my dog.
Exactly. And I think the answer is, if you're asking what's better for marketing and to kind of bring in business, is it to be authentic or to sell? The answer isn't and or. The answer is be authentic and don't sell. Right. And that's kind of the problem. And that's the conversation that I get in trouble with people a lot, of having that conversation, having that when you're talking to, say, sales directors, they're like, so we're not going to sell. What's the point? The answer is, if you're posting on something like, say, LinkedIn, everybody's there for business. Everybody knows that you are selling something. I don't need to hear, hey, $9.99, you can buy my stuff and it'll be super good. I don't need to see that. Everyone's an informed buyer now, right? It goes back to what we were saying earlier about what is the unique selling point of any business. You are. So pushing out that and being authentic. And actually what we see is that the content that gets the best engagement and really gets the most likes and the most comments are things which aren't anything to do with the business. Still, for instance, if it's LinkedIn, still has a business feel or a business message or a business anecdote, but it's personal to you, what you're going through. That's what connects with people. And ultimately, I think the thing which a lot of sales directors forget is the fact that connecting people is why you have salespeople, right? If you want them to connect with you and your brand, they will, but you can't make as many phone calls as you can get views or listens on a podcast or views on a video. You just can't do it. What you can do is put that messaging out there and allow people to say, like, oh, okay, I also had a bad Monday, follow. And then as you're talking about yourself, naturally, you're going to be talking about some of the things you do. I'm on this show, and I've mentioned that we do podcast production a bunch of times because that's what I do all day. It's just natural for it to be out there. So every time I'm creating content, it has some of the messaging in there, but we don't have to be like, buy my service. It's really great, because I can find you or your competitor or the 1,000 other people which offer whatever you do online. So why would I want to work with you? Because you've come and spoken to me in some way as a person and been authentic.
And It's so effectively what's got in my head from what you said here, and pardon the analogy, but it's a bit like it's a bit like, I don't know, pursuing someone that you're attracted to and having a good relationship that lasts in a way.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, all business, I always relate to, in some way, relationships because there is no difference. Um, it's incredibly, I'd prefer to find someone that we can work with for the next 5 years, who will ultimately, potentially, spend more money than someone who's going to spend a huge deal tomorrow and never work with us again. We'll be better at working with someone over time. Of course, they'll be better at working with us. They'll know how we work, our ebbs and flows, our mechanics. We'll understand the brand more. You know, it's always nicer to work with people for an elongated period of time. Um, just for the simple fact is you get to make sure that you're tweaking those things and getting everything perfect and actually optimizing content as opposed to just delivering on briefs.
Okay. What what being on the thing is though, with honesty, I find it can be a tricky subject area. In performing arts, when I work with other people, it can be tricky because you like they I'm not being Gordon Ramsay and like trying to like boom boom boom. I often try and be honest, but even if you're being nice in a nice sort of docile way, people sometimes they go boom and they go for you. And how do you sort of deal with that when you're being honest and authentic and well, people not biting your head off?
Well, yeah, but you can be honest and authentic without presenting it in an antagonistic way. Not something I've always been fantastic at myself. However, certainly something you can learn. And, you know, we went from 2 guys in a shed to 5 guys in a shed in 8 months. We then moved into the 2 floors of offices, outgrew that and have recently moved into a big old office just around the corner. The company's grown with that. All of a sudden, I've had lots of employees, lots of, you know, different minds, and everyone's a hero to their own story. And I guess that's mostly the way that I find that you can, when you can get across how you feel, but not have it, you know, and taken badly, is when you can remember that everyone else is the hero of their own everything, right? They only see it from the, you know, from their first person view. So I get where you're coming from. I love what you just did. I'm not feeling it's quite right for where I'm going for. That's usually the hardest time to really choose your language, but understanding that those times when you know, you really have something you want to get across, you're not happy maybe with how things have turned out, you feel passionately about how it should be done, those are the times to take like 11 steps back and just think about how you're going to present the situation. Because if you don't, you're just going to waste your time. You're just going to end up working hard to fix the problem you've caused or has been caused by you know, and then that's going to frustrate you more. Ultimately, you're now going to be twice as much time down the road where you have to go back and be like, so what I was trying to say is, can we do it one more time, but a bit like this, you know? But but at this point, you might not even care about that change. You might have lost the passion for it, and that's a shame because that's how greatness happens, when someone really, really cares and is able to put it across. I think I've had to learn my learning curve has been really hard. I'm very quick to react. I've got a real sharp temper. I like things to be perfect for our clients. Within what we can do, I want it to be perfect. I don't want to see mistakes. Like, I just want things looked at 4 or 5 times. However, mistakes happen all the time. Clients don't give the brief that they really want. We don't have exactly what we need, so we deliver, you know, what do you think? And they hate it. Happens, right? It just is what it is. How you're able to react with it, and more importantly, how you're able to react to your team's view, so they're still able to be as efficient as you need them to be. That's what helps me go, okay, what I think is, right? And take those steps back, because I look at my clock and be like, oh, I hate this design, or, I really hate that part of the video. Okay, but do I have 45 minutes to upset that person and then another 45 to kind of like make good and then get back to this? Or should I just go and sit on it for like an hour, and then come back and be like, hey, you know, I've been thinking about it, and what do you think about this? Right? Because I'm sort of feeling a bit like this. What do you think about it? But mostly it's your reaction. It's how you have reacted. And even though you don't know, but your face or the thing or the body language or your tone, you don't even realize you're doing it because you're passionate. That's fine. I think that's absolutely fine. It's okay to be passionate and care, and people should know that you're that kind of person. But if every time something goes wrong, they're going to get a scowly like, oh man, we had Jesus. No. They're not going to tell you when those problems are happening. And that's the worst thing possible. But more importantly, every time you go to change something, it's going to become world championship, heavyweight fight for the world. When instead, if you just take a moment, take yourself out of the situation, come back an hour later, 2 days later, a week later, whatever the deadline or, you know, whatever the work says that you can do, come back and just be like, all this time since you last said it, and I said, yeah, that's cool, but let me think about it. I've been mulling this over, and I'm thinking this, but you tell me, like, let's have a conversation about that now. Now I'm saying it there. We're both in the same place, and you're giving yourself the space basically for someone else to be like, oh, thank you for taking the time to think about it. Maybe I am wrong. Okay, great. What's your idea? No, I still hate it. Okay, cool. And then you can go to the bats and try and get things done, right? Sometimes you have to put your foot down if you are in charge, but hopefully you surround yourself by brilliant people and get out of their way.
Yeah. Do you put a punch bag in there to let it out? Or like
I absolutely had a punch bag in the office for 2.5 years.
That's good.
I did. I literally took when we moved from the shed environment that we were in for one hot summer into GL Towers, as we affectionately call it. I took a whole room and a whole space and set up a gym there. And at the end of every day, I would go and deadlift as heavy as I possibly could and hit the bag as much as I could. I used to have an MMA fighter, a semi-professional fighter who'd come and train me in that little office, running up and down the stairs and land a punch, so I didn't break my wrists or break my hands. But yeah, I've really had to work hard to find avenues to release my natural pissed offness. Just, you know, and that way I feel a lot like, I'm not as quick to react on things. I'm not as aggressive with it. I've let out aggression. I hit the gym in the mornings. And if I'm honest, it's one of the hardest things since lockdown is that I'm not going to the gym, and I miss that just kind of focus on me and picking things up and putting them down and having to put some might and power into something for an hour and then coming into work like, hey guys, how's everyone doing? You know, and there are no problems once you've got rid of all of that.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think that's what makes a lot of people successful. People who are successful, there's a bit of that anger or that drive in them, which a lot of people don't have. They just have that. They don't know where it comes from, but people have that for their experience.
Sure. And I think drive, yes. Anger, no. There aren't a lot of angry, successful people anymore. There aren't. There's still the legacy of people like Roger Ailes and who started Fox News and the Donald Trumps out there in the world, but angry doesn't really work for management ever. And I'm saying that from someone who's learned that over the last 5 years. It just never is, no matter how passionately you care about that thing, being angry about it is not ever the right response. I say ever, but with the people you work with and with the things you're trying to achieve. If something drastic happens, sure, you can be angry about something, you know, horrendous happening, but the people you work with shouldn't be around someone who's angry about something. Being passionate, being driven, caring more than everyone else. Hell yeah, that's what successful people do. But communication is key because you can't do it on your own. There's no way you can end up to any of your heroes' lofty success without other people around you, and them being afraid, I guarantee, is never the most efficient way of them working. So you're never as successful as you could be.
Yeah, I think effectively, well, successful people, I think they've already achieved what they wanted. They have that. They're happy, and let me rephrase what I'm getting at. I think they don't have the hang-ups of someone who's working a job they hate effectively. So they don't have the.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean that says is success money or what is success? Because we've made an awful lot of money in the past. Would I say it was successful? Not yet. Why? Because my ideas of success keep moving. My goalposts keep moving as I see the future and see what's possible. Will be a success when I don't have to work in the business every day. That's my line of success. But when people look at us, we've got 10 people, we work all over the world. It's a successful business. We make profit every year. It's a successful business. So it's driving those lines to success. And I think for me, what I'm looking for is unprecedented success in whatever we can do, right? In the best success that we can do. And as we keep growing, that changes, right? Our focus changes and what we want to do change. Like I say, when I get to walk away from the business, then that's my benchmark of I'm now a successful business owner.
What was the bit I want to get at now? How do you balance sort of family and relationships when you're working? I think that's what I find a difficult thing.
Sure. I've surrounded myself by really good family and really good relationships. I met my wife 9, maybe 10 years, no, 9. She'll probably shout from the other room. We're both working from home today. I met my wife about 9 years ago. And I wasn't as driven or successful or trying to be as driven and successful as I could be. And meeting her changed that. And this is also the most frugal woman on the world. She doesn't want anything expensive. I couldn't buy her an expensive wedding dress. We couldn't do that. She's not into that. But I want to impress my wife. I want to impress Louise. I've always wanted to do better ever since meeting her. I think I'm punching above my weight, and I want her to be like, wow, he is pretty cool at some point, right? So for me, surrounded and I have phenomenal support at home. So before we started the business 5 years ago, I was working in high-end IT sales, like I was saying, and it was good. The money was phenomenal. I just didn't love what I was doing. I just didn't love it. I didn't love the environment. I didn't love what I was selling. I didn't really care or even understand it or ever know what it was. And the first month that I'd made essentially what's going to be a six-figure role for the year, I paid more tax in that month than I'd ever paid I was paid in my first year of the job. I turned around to my wife and was like, so can I go work in a shed? Can I go work in a shed with my friend Tony and do this podcast thing? And she's amazing. Like, she was like, yeah, absolutely, you need to go and do that. You have to go and do that. Like, you're not happy with what you're doing. Doesn't matter about the money. We can deal with things. We can sort it out. Thankfully, she's got a phenomenal job, and we were able to say, you keep working and I'll do the best I can. And thankfully, the best I can turned into something very, very quickly, and we were never in a position. But she gave me the ultimate support to be like, yeah, cool. We're in this together, but I'm with you. Let's try this. And off the back of that, we have, like I say, started this entire company. And managed to have a whole lot of good times. My friend group is very small. I don't have a huge lot of friends, but I think that's just something that you say when you're 35. I got 10 great friends who I call and message all the time. There's not a whole lot of periphery people around there, but that's great because I've got my friends, they're family to me. Most of them are business owners now. In fact, I think only one isn't a business owner now. Everyone else either owns a business or runs a business or founded a business. So everyone goes through the same thing, and that work-life balance is it's tough, it's hard, but it's thankfully, if I say to my friends at 9 o'clock I can't do something because I'm working, they're like, cool, no worries, take it easy, see you next time. Whereas I know a lot of people out there will be like, you're always working, come out, forget about it, and not support your journey. So I think I'm very lucky at having that support from friends and family about the work-life balance. The hardest thing is really just learning when to switch off, when to just hit off, done, I'm finished. And for me, that's the weekend. I stop working at 6 or 7, 8 o'clock on Friday, and I don't work again until Monday morning. that gives me the time to go, and to talk to my wife and spend time with her and really focus and not spend time with her like this with a phone right at my nose being like, yes, I love you. And then back to work. Like, that's not what I'm working for, you know? That's not what I'm interested in. I hate people when you see a couple at the restaurant and one of them sat on their phones. I hate that. That is the rudest thing you can do. Why go out with someone else? I don't care who it is, your mum, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, whatever you want. Spend time with people. Spend time directly with people, focusing on them. Don't be like, did you? Or, hey, have you seen this? Like, that's not necessarily engaging with people. There's so much to be had for the interaction. I think, the same needs to be said in a relationship, and the same needs to be said in business. Focus your time so you can say, I'm going to spend time with you, working directly with you on this, if it's your relationship or your business or your friends. But then, once you break that time off and say, that is time for that, don't do the other thing. Don't dilute it. Do something well, don't do it half-heartedly.
So you're very picky about what you let in around you, and with people that are in your circle, you're dedicated to them. And the thing I want to get at is, must have been hard and difficult to build this sort of circle you have now, and must have taken time.
Well, like I said, I was a very angry guy for a long time. Not really. I managed to get rid of kind of people around me who didn't want to hang out with how positive I can be with time, or how snappy and passionate I can be about other things. So for me, this is the same group of friends which I met at 16, 17. These are the same people. We've all grown up together. They've always been my friends. I got a bunch of other people that are great friends. But even within the business we work in, we've employed people we know some of the time. We've got some great friends where, our head of our operations manager now started working for me in his second bar job back when he was 18 and I was like 24 running bars or something. It's great having that long-term relationship with people, and it's great to meet new people. Obviously this last year has been a little bit difficult with that, but I'm lucky to have had such a great group of friends around me for so long.
And did you find it difficult at first to remove people from your circle?
No, not really. I'm very pragmatic with that kind of thing. If you don't like it, goodbye. Let's not waste each other's time. I'm in or I'm not. If you're a great friend of mine, I'm there for you until, I'll lay in traffic for you. If you're not, then I'll see you next time for a beer. I don't need to contact you that often. And what I've found over years and years is that if you don't keep in contact with people, you lose contact with people. So for me, it's not that difficult. You got a bunch of people I speak to, a lot on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and such that I know, but I'm very lucky to be able to say that I've got 10, 12 really close friends, family, brothers and sisters, who, I can do anything for them, will do anything for me.
And what do you think makes other people perhaps not be in the position of being able to choose? Because a lot of people, they get in the sort of situation where they're people they don't necessarily like or respect, but they're stuck with them. They get stuck in ruts. And
you're never stuck in a rut. You just haven't decided to leave yet. Move, get yourself out, keep moving. Like if you don't like something, change it. My mum has always said to me, moan as much as you want, but at the end of that moan, I'm going to ask you what you're going to do. So moan, cry. No, it's all too much, Mum. I can't do it. I just can't do it. No one understands. Great. At the end of it, she's going to always ask me, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to fix this? You're not just going to let this go on till tomorrow, are you? So for that reason, I think, you should treat yourself the same. Don't let yourself get into bad situations. Don't allow other people to to bring you down or stop you from achieving your goals. And if they are, you don't need to talk to them. You don't need to talk to people. You don't need to be around people. Move house, move countries, move wherever you need to move. Stop going to that Facebook group. Stop going online. Unfollow people. It's very, very easy. Now it's just click, click, click. I don't even have to stop going to the same pub anymore. I can just unfollow, right? But that's how it used to be back in the day. Geez, I've fallen in with a bad crowd. I don't want to see them no more. I won't go to that pub anymore. I'm going to start going to this bar, or I'm going to start going here. I might stop going to bars, and you just start seeing people. I never agree that you're stuck in a situation. You are either trying to get out of a situation or not.
Okay, and what do you? Yeah, there's a lot of what do you think of? Yeah, you're very boom, boom, boom. You're very, what if you don't like it, son? Boom.
Yeah, because this is who I am, and I'm always going to be like this. So why waste your time? I don't want to waste someone's time upsetting them. I'm not out. I'm not. I'm not opinionated to upset people. I specifically don't want to upset anyone. I just have my opinions and have things that I want to achieve. And if I try and make everyone happy doing that, especially people on the periphery who aren't helping me achieve those goals, I won't. I will not succeed. And for me, unfortunately, I've had to give up a lot of the, frivolous, wonderful rights that people have, like my opinion. It's not my opinion anymore. My opinion is the opinion of 10 people. I've got mortgages that people pay mortgages, rent, food because of the business we employ. I can't go out there and do X, Y, and Z, waste time doing that because I need to make sure that jobs are kept.
Yeah. You've got other people. It's not only just your missus and you that you got to take care of. And okay, and you've sort of fostered like a family sort of environment where in your work as well.
To a degree, absolutely. And even if it's not the family side of things, I think it's my responsibility as a business owner. My responsibility as a business owner is saying, hey, do you want to come and work here and do this thing I like? If you do that, then I will reward you with this money thing every month. And if you continue to be good at it, you will have security in that job for as long as, I have this job. Excuse me. So for that reason, does that mean that I can necessarily be myself all the time? No, of course I can't. Does that mean I can always choose my opinion? No, greater good. I have to think of the greater good. Who cares about my rent? There's 10 other rents that are just as important. All those people are heroes of their story too, right? All of those people are fighting the good fight. I got this great job doing something for these crazy guys. That's their role. They're killing it. My job is to make sure that that's still there tomorrow, make sure that that's still there in a year, 10 years, right? And that all those people who do phenomenally are paid more money and there's more support for them as time goes on. So I can't necessarily, I have to be boom, 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 boom. I have to be the decision maker. I have to make sure that I'm getting stuff done because if not, the business will wither and die. The jobs won't be there. We won't be in a situation now where everyone that are working with us is still with us after, post-COVID. We've still got everyone here that we need and, are still killing it for us and we've been able to provide those jobs. If we don't have specific targets, specific goals, specific achievements that we want to make, then we'll just be like, maybe we make more money this month or I don't know, maybe not. And then all of a sudden we won't be paying wages and we won't have rent and we won't have a nice offices and everything will fall to pieces.
Yeah, it's been good to talk to you. A lot of lovely points that I'd love to share with a lot of people.
Marvins.
And what is sort of advice you give to younger self, and what is a quote that you'd like to live your life by?
Nice. So advice I'd give myself, I don't want to give myself any advice. I've really enjoyed this journey. I've had a whole lot of fun. I've made a bunch of mistakes. I didn't start doing what I'm doing and really focusing on sales and getting involved until a decade ago. And I'm 36 now. So I was well into my mid-20s before I really pulled my act together. I run bars. I had fun. I lived in Spain. I did this. I think if I'd go back and tell myself, just keep having fun. Just keep your eye on the prize. Keep doing what you're doing and you'll find yourself in the right place. As far as a quote, is this an explicit podcast?
Yes.
Sweet, because I haven't sworn yet. That's good times. Okay, in that case, my favorite quote is, you made this motherfucker, right? You made this motherfucker. I made the person I am today. No one else made it. No one fucked around with me at all. It's I chose to make this person, and I'm going to choose to make the person that's even better than him tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a fantastic little quote. That should be a meme.
You made this motherfucker. Indeed, we might have to get Samuel L. Jackson to come in and say it. He's kind of coined the word.
Yeah, I do remember his snakes saying and snakes on the plane.
The height of being able to just drop 2 words and make a movie around the back of it.
Yeah, he is. I like him as well, but he's an awesome man.
Absolutely, and a phenomenal actor, and one of the most prolific actors of all time. He's been in everything.
Yeah, he's a beast. One thing I want to say is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Not really. Like I say, we don't sell. We don't need to. People come and find us if they're looking for support in content creation. Then come and find GL Pro UK. We're on all the platforms that we're on. If you can't find us, then we're not on there. If you want to come find me and talk to me, more than happy to talk about anything. As you can tell today with Marvin, haven't shut up, so I'm much like that on social too. So feel free to catch me, and I'm Jay Ludgrove everywhere. It's JAYLUDGROVE everywhere. If you can't find me on the platform, I'm not there.
So you hear that, viewers back home, listen up. If you want to contact this man, you know where to go. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and yeah, just best wishes during this pandemic, and take care.
You too, bud. I'm going to take a shot at you there and say, take it easy.
See ya.